The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Nick Kassotis was a Navy JAG, a trained prosecutor. After divorcing his first wife, he was hit with a $1.5 million divorce judgment. Then Nick and his second wife, Mindi, went on the run. But what were they running from? Was it the seven-figure judgment, or was someone out to do them harm? Mindi ended up murdered and dismembered. Prosecutors say it was Nick who did it, but the defense is pointing the finger elsewhere. Where is the truth in this case? Where are the lies? Tonight, we take a look at the dramatic testimony of Kassotis' first wife. What does she think of her ex now? But first, in the quiet college town of Moscow, Idaho, the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students shattered a community. Kelly Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found stabbed to death in their off-campus home, the scene drenched in chaos and terror. Investigators quickly honed in on the killer, a criminology student whose alleged movements were captured in chilling surveillance footage. The Lake Charles County Prosecutor's Office built a mountain of evidence, DNA, phone records, and eyewitness accounts. Yet, in a stunning twist, a plea deal was offered. Why? Tonight, the prosecutor answers that question. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And we've got some really interesting things to talk about tonight. And we begin with the worst of the worst. You know who I'm talking about. The killer. The man who took the lives of 4 University of Idaho students. Tonight, I'll refer to him as BK. Okay? Refer to him as BK. Worst of the worst, right? This is someone who seemingly, for whatever reason, we're still trying to figure out, took the lives of 4 innocent young people. Wiped them out. For no reason. Now, you try to get inside the mind of the killer. It's difficult sometimes. Sometimes you can, sometimes they allow you in. But the thing that's clear is that there was nothing about this mass murder that was anything other than evil. Like, this is the type of, this is when you write a death penalty statute in a death penalty state like Idaho, that's the kind of guy you've got in the back of your mind, right? The worst of the worst, an evil person, someone that would prey upon young people, a mass murderer, a psychopath, a potential serial killer. That's who you send to death row, right? That's who you send there. Now, Idaho has the death penalty, and you would think that's what it's reserved for, the absolute worst of the worst. As a matter of fact, Chad Daybell, he's on death row. He's pretty bad, to say the least. All the carnage that he caused. His loving, trusting wife. The children of his second wife. This is a bad dude, and he ended up on death row where he belongs. Lori Daybell should likely be there as well, but prosecutors messed up, so she wasn't eligible for it at trial. But this guy, BK, got a deal. But why did he get a deal? Why did the prosecutor say, okay, I understand this is the most notorious killer I've ever prosecuted, probably the most notorious killer in the history of the state of Idaho, public enemy #1, scared everyone, sent fear, brutalized these innocent young victims who did absolutely nothing wrong, but he's going to get a deal. And we've been asking why? Well, tonight we're going to get some sort of an answer, because Don Nelson from Scripps News Group interviewed Bill Thompson. We're going to play a bunch of pieces of that interview to get some more insight into this case, the evidence. But let's begin here with the plea deal. Why did the prosecutor make the decision to cut a break to BK? Take a listen.
The talk of a plea deal. When did that first arise? Or as a prosecutor, do you always put that on the table on a death penalty case like this?
No, we were not looking for a plea in this case. We were on track for trial. Ashley and Josh and I have been working 7 days a week for several months, getting ready for trial. We were in court. You'll probably remember, we were in court on June 18th, and Judge Hippler heard arguments on the defense's request to continue the trial and also a request to offer evidence, alternate perpetrator evidence, which essentially means they wanted to point the finger at somebody else. And the judge made it quite clear in court that he was not going to deny, or that he was not going to grant. The judge made it quite clear he was not going to grant either of those motions. It was that following week that we were contacted by the defense with a question of whether we were in a position to make an offer. Our immediate response was to throw the question back at the defense and say, well, what is the defendant willing to do? And then we, at the same time, scheduled meetings with families of all the victims. We met with them, looking at my calendar here, Thursday and Friday, June 26th and 27th. We met with representatives of all the families, and we told them about the update of the status. We gave them an update on the status of the case. Mm-hmm. And then we told them that the defense had approached us about a possible plea, and that before we made a decision, we wanted to hear everybody's thoughts on the parameters of a possible plea offer if we wanted to make a plea offer. Mm-hmm. So we heard from them. As you can imagine, there was quite a range of opinions. There were a number of family members who expressed they really wanted to be able to put this case to rest with finality and certainty, and avoid the trauma and uncertainty of a trial. There were also family members who very strongly felt that the case should pursue the death penalty, no matter how long it might take to get an imposition of a death penalty. So with that information, the attorney team, we met and talked it over, and we decided to make the offer, which was the only offer that was possible to be considered, and that would be he would have to plead guilty as charged to all 5 felonies. He would have to agree to waive appeals. That was crucially important because we wanted finality for these victims' families and not have them suffer from endless appeals, just re-victimizing themselves. And we made it clear that we would be looking at fixed life sentences so that he would not leave prison until he died. The defense came back to us that Monday morning, contacted us and Judge Hippler, and said he's prepared to proceed and plead guilty, and Judge Hippler put it on the calendar for July 2nd.
That's the explanation, and we knew the families were somewhat split, and he is conceding there that it was the lawyers that decided that they did not want to go forward with this. It was the lawyers who decided to give a break to the most notorious killer that they'll ever prosecute in their careers. Let me bring in our think tank, see what they have to say about this. You're kind of reading between the lines with me on this one, right? Criminal defense attorney Sidney Rushing is with us. Also with us, trial attorney, former police lieutenant Rick King, along with attorney Ali Benevento. Great to see everyone tonight. Thank you for being here. All right, Sidney, okay. So this wasn't a matter of what the families wanted or didn't want, because they were absolutely split. They were all over the place. This was the decision of the prosecuting attorneys. Isn't their job to try cases?
Yes, their job is to try cases, but also at the same time, it's when I tell my clients who are, defendants in this case usually, sometimes there comes a point where you have to think about risk management. And for the family, this gives them, not only does it give them closure, but it gives them finality. This plea deal made it to where he gave up his appellate rights. Now, that doesn't mean all of them, but for the most part, it does. And with that, they get to close the door on this. If he would have went to trial and found guilty, they would have to then have another, mini trial essentially for the death penalty to be given. And then imagine the amount of motions and hearings he's going to have between then and whenever his death day would come. The family would be in court over and over and over and reliving this story. So yes, it is the prosecutor's job to go to trial, but at the same point, he got the end that he wanted here, which was a conviction, and for BK to go to prison for the rest of his life. He will never be released.
Yeah, but I'm still not buying the reason, Rick. I'm not buying. It's not. There's no such thing as finality in our system. We know that. It was supposed to be finality, by the way, for the Menendez brothers, right? They didn't go to death row. Life in prison. They're never getting out, ladies and gentlemen. No, they're getting out. We know that's going to happen. So there's never finality. The law could change. There could be a point in this country, Rick, right? You know, we don't know what's going to happen 20 years down the road where all of a sudden life in prison is cruel and unusual punishment because we have some bleeding heart liberals on the Supreme Court of the United States. That could happen. That could happen. That could happen, right?
Here's the thing.
No, but it could happen, Rick. The only finality is the death penalty, if you're going to talk about absolute finality, when that day comes. That's the only real finality. Why do you think they did it? Did they just... Was there a risk here? The evidence was pretty overwhelming, I believe. It was overwhelming enough that he's willing to plead guilty, knowing how overwhelming it is.
Yeah, I think sometimes, Vinny, even more than the risk of trial, sometimes it's taking the family through that process again.
Wait, Rick, the families were split. It didn't come down to the families. Families were split. Half of them get it done, the other half, let's go forward. So we can't put it on the families. We can't put it on the families.
Yeah, I think,
and they were split. So
I don't think you can put it on the families fully, but it's at the same time, I think you take into consideration medical examiner photos, crime scene photos, testimony from people who were there. All those things, the families reliving that over and over, and prosecutors, while the families were split, that still has to weigh on them. And I still think that they take a look at that and they go, here's a guy who the evidence is overwhelming. He's going to plead guilty. He's going to do every single day of the rest of his life in prison. And
probably
these families aren't and these families aren't going to be, drugged through that endless torture again. I think that was, to me, I believe that has to be some sort of reasoning behind what the prosecutors did here.
Yeah, the other thing about throwing away the appeals, Ed, we know, Allie, that it's not every appeal. There'll be habeas motions. You can't predict all the things that are going to happen. Like, be a realist in our system. The families should know that it's not final. Nothing is final, right? They have to understand that. They may not, because hopefully this is the first time they've ever been involved with the criminal justice system. But I know from covering this stuff for years, it's never over. It's never over until they are dead, either passing away in prison, then they can't file any more motions, or the death penalty when it's over. That's the only time it's ever actually over. Allie, what are your thoughts here? Why do you think they made this decision? What do you think the truth is? Did they not want to try the case?
So you're right. Nothing is ever final until it's final. But let's not forget, everybody here are trial lawyers, I believe. We all try cases, and we know that there is nothing as unpredictable sometimes as a jury. And so let us not fool ourselves into believing that this was a certainty of conviction. And then, as Sydney was saying, a certainty that the death penalty would be imposed if they got to the penalty phase of the trial. And so why did they make the decision? I think we listened to what he just said. He spoke to the families. They were approached by the defense. This was an opportunity to have some semblance of certainty, some semblance of peace for these families, closure. And I think at the end of the day, the prosecutor does not work for the victims. Yes, they must take the victims' wishes into consideration, but their job is to do justice, to be efficient with the resources of the state of Idaho, and to do what they believe is a just outcome in the case. And I think this gave them not a perfect solution, but this gave them a good solution, because nothing is ever certain when it comes to putting a jury in the box.
All right, all I'm saying, from this point forward, every killer gets the offer. If there's no one, I can't imagine someone's going to be more notorious or worse than this guy. Every killer's got to get the offer now. That's all. They go in, they know. There is no death penalty out there. There is no deterrent in Latah County, because you know you're going to get an offer of life, because they don't want to try the cases. Let's take a listen to a little bit more here from the prosecutor talking, again, about the families.
And we absolutely understand how everybody grieves differently. We understand and recognize that there are family members who don't agree with the resolution that has occurred. And I respect that. They are entitled to feel as they wish about this. And I respect the fact, I'm glad for the fact they were able to express themselves to the judge at the time of sentencing. In the end, it was our decision. Actually, in the end, ultimately, it was my decision as the elected prosecutor. And we are satisfied, our attorney team, our prosecution team, our law enforcement team, we are all satisfied that we made the right decision. Understanding that there are people who legitimately and for good reasons don't agree with what our decision was.
Have any family members, parents, siblings, aunts, uncles reached out to you since that day in Ada County when the door was shut, Mr. Koberger?
Yes, we've heard from some of the families. The families that we've heard from directly have all expressed thanks and support for the decision and feeling like maybe now they can start trying to move forward with their lives. We are also aware that there are family members who are not happy with the decision, don't agree with the decision, who have been voicing their feelings about that. And that's certainly their right. I don't begrudge them that. We cannot imagine what it must be like to lose a child, the way these families have lost a child, a sister, a brother, a friend. It's just unimaginable. And so we respect completely how everybody has their own way of having to deal with this and to grieve.
Any idea where the murder weapon went?
No, and I don't think we'll ever know. I know there are questions. It's human nature for all of us to think, okay, well, explain why this happened. We understand that. I can tell you that from the very beginning, the FBI brought out members of their behavioral analysis unit, their profilers, to try to help us develop some insights. And they told us early on, just looking at the nature of the crimes, the fact that there was no direct connection that anybody could find between the murderer and the victims, they said, in our experience, you likely will never know why this happened. And even if the murderer were to try to say something, it wouldn't make sense to anybody but the murderer. And that's kind of the reality. Judge Hippler commented a little bit on that too at the time of sentencing, that it's natural for people to have those sorts of questions, but in a case like this, we aren't going to get the answers from the defendant. And even if he said something, there would be no way to corroborate it or to believe him.
All right, Rick, as a condition of this gift that prosecutors gave him, right, the gift of life, couldn't they have made a condition, hey, how about a proffer from the killer? Tell us where the murder weapon is. Tell us where the rest of the evidence is, because we can corroborate that. And then proffer questions like why you did it, how you picked your victims, all of that. You can believe it or not believe it, but you could ask him to make that a condition of his plea, couldn't you?
You could ask that, Vinnie, but what are the chances that he wants to do that or he's going to do that? I just don't. For me, if it's my client, we're not doing that. Right? That's not happening.
Okay, but here's the thing, right? Here's the thing, right? He's not going to appeal, so he can admit all this stuff. He has to in the guilty plea anyway. But they came to the prosecution saying we want to plead guilty, right? So how about Allie? How about putting a couple conditions on this, like, hey, tell us where the murder weapon is. Tell us where the clothes are. Show us where your mask is. Tell us why you picked Maddie, why you picked this one, and where you went. Give us an outline of the whole night. Why not do that?
I mean, I suppose they could do whatever they wanted, but at the end of the day, they chose to extend an offer of life without the possibility of parole, with all of his appeals being waived. And so I know we can sit here and say, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? But at the end of the day, like the prosecutor was saying, there's not a reason to believe a single word that would come out of Brian Kohberger's mouth, especially at that point in time. And so I suppose they could have gone in with conditions, but at the end of the day, they chose not to, because I think they believe that they did what was best for these 4 families who have suffered an absolutely horrific loss. And they gave these people some semblance of peace and closure. And to further make that more of a circus by giving Brian Kohberger a platform to brag about or to give information about why he did what he did, when we couldn't believe that anyway.
Could be a private interview.
It doesn't have to be in public, you're right.
You can corroborate, though, where the murder weapon is and the other evidence that he got rid of that night. All right, here we go.
What if you didn't?
What's that, Rick?
But what if you didn't? What if he sent you running around on a goose chase?
Then he gets the death penalty trial. There you go. Make it a condition. That's what, I mean, I don't know. All right, great news. Think Tank staying with us. When we come back, we're going to hear more of the prosecutor's interview, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, new information about the Idaho 4 killer coming from his cell phone. Was he inspired by the Gainesville Ripper, a case seen on court TV in the early 90s? Tonight, we investigate.
The Court TV podcast will return.
The truth is, the scariest part about you is how painfully average you turned out to be. The truth is, you're as dumb as they come. Stupid, clumsy, slow, sloppy, weak, dirty. Let me be very clear. Don't ever try to convince yourself you mattered just because someone finally said your name out loud. I see through you. You want the truth? Here's the one you'll hate the most. If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, in the middle of the night, like a pedophile, Kaylee would have kicked your ass. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kaylee's sister, Olivia Gonzalez, at the sentencing of the killer. I want you to take a listen to the prosecutor talking about this and this part of what happened inside the courtroom, because it's not ordinary that victims are allowed to go that far or sometimes even directly address the killer. Let's take a listen.
Did Judge Hippler, in your view, Bill, give them a bit of wiggle room as to what they could say and the reaction from the folks inside the courtroom? I know it's the applause in a courtroom is something you don't see often.
No, and we weren't quite sure how Judge Hippler would react to that. I think that he made clearly the right call. There was a lot of emotion, and these families, they needed the opportunity to express themselves. Certainly, if it had been the sentencing phase or the penalty phase of the capital case, the law would have prohibited much of what was said or occurred in the courtroom, but that wasn't the situation. And we applaud Judge Hippler for letting the families express themselves.
All right, our think tank's still with us. Cindy Rushing, Rick King, and Ali Benevento. All right, Cindy, what'd you think of the way that all went down?
I think it was, they spoke their mind. They spoke their piece, and they got to say it. They got to say it to his face. Olivia, I think, did absolutely fantastic. Her victim impact statement was so powerful. It was strong. And it kind of pointed out all the issues, with BK, and that he likes to have control. So I'm not very surprised that he wanted to take a plea offer, because that allowed him to control the narrative. However, she let him know how sloppy he was, all of the mistakes he made. He really has OCD, he has all these things, and she called him out on every single thing and said it straight to his face. And you could tell that her statement specifically really bothered him. I'm not surprised that the judge, no one took it too far. I mean, it was getting kind of borderline close there. But we had a case in Michigan, Larry Nassar, same thing. The judge let the, victims in that case let it all out. And so, I think that allows them to have that closure that they so badly wanted to get, because they finally got to voice their opinion to him, instead of going to a trial where potentially it could have came back not guilty and they never got to say a thing.
Yeah, not in Idaho. It wasn't going to be a not guilty in Idaho. No, I don't think so.
You never know, right, Vinnie?
I know you never know. I know you never know.
With juries.
But the evidence,
never know.
The evidence is what it is. Let me ask you, Allie, that moment I think was empowering for Olivia Gonzalez, and it seemed to have some impact on the defendant. Do you think that maybe the family will take away from it? That was the trade-off, right? Because I think Bill Thompson's right. If you've got a jury there, that's not going to happen, right? If there's victim impact and there's a jury at that moment, unless you do the victim impact after the jury has already given their recommendation to the judge, that wouldn't necessarily happen. But if that was the trade-off, maybe that's where they can walk away with something from this whole process.
For sure. These victim impact statements and the moment that a victim is able to face the person that hurt them or hurt their family in court can be so powerful. It can be so cathartic for people. And I think that Olivia took advantage of the opportunity to face Bryan Kohberger and at least attempt to make him feel just a fraction of the hurt that she and her family and the families of the other three were feeling. Now, as for how she delivered that, again, I'm not in a position to judge the way anyone grieves or the way they process such a traumatic event. I do, however, have a great deal of respect for the court. I'm a trial lawyer. I think there's a certain element of decorum and sanctity in a courtroom. And while Bryan Kohberger pleaded guilty to a heinous, disgusting, despicable act, I do still think that a courtroom should be a place of decorum and respect. And unfortunately, I think a little bit of that was missing. But again, none of us can possibly imagine what that family was going through. And victims have this right at this stage to face the person who hurt them and say what they have to say. And again, she was very brave and took advantage of that opportunity.
Rick, why don't you take a listen to Bill Thompson here? Don Nelson, the reporter, asked him a very interesting question. Let's take a listen.
Do you ever make eye contact with Bryan Kohberger in Ada County or Latah County? And if you did, what was that like for you?
I looked at the defendant probably more when we were still up here in Latah County. Anybody who's seen me in court before knows that I tend to engage with defendants, particularly at sentencings. But there was a vacancy, a distance that I saw in this defendant, or that I sensed. And so I think I looked at him once during the sentencing itself. And that's when I pointed to him and talked about he's going to go through that door into the Department of Corrections, and the door's going to close forever. And he's not coming out until he's dead. That's all that I had to direct at him.
I will say this, Rick. You know, Bill Thompson had a lot of pressure on him from the beginning. He was there right after the crime happened. He was overseeing a lot of what was happening here. And they did an amazing job of gathering the evidence in this case and building the case. And I think that's probably the most important part of what they did.
I agree. I think the evidence they were able to mount together and put this case against BK led to that defense ultimately coming to the table and say, hey, listen, we don't want to take that extra step. We want to try to resolve it right here. In terms of looking at the defendant in the eye, though, I find that prosecutors are really adept at doing that. I find that they find that moment in the trial where they want to turn to the defendant and stare him down and point to him and almost talk to him in the course of what they're doing. So I'm shocked that he said he only did it a few times, but I find it happens quite often. And I can imagine looking into the eyes of BK. I think he said they were vacant. I imagined, and just looking at the photos that come across the screen here, they look vacant. They look hollow. He's a scary individual.
Devoid of humanity is, I think, the best way to describe him. All right, everyone sit tight. When we come back, we're going to talk about the big trial everyone's watching on Court TV. This guy's a lawyer. He's on the right. On the left is his first wife, his ex-wife, but he's on trial for the murder of his second wife. What did the ex have to say about Nick Kassotis? That's next.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
From where you're seated, can you see the defendant, Nicholas Kassotis, in this case?
Yes.
Do you know that person?
Yes.
How do you know him?
I was married to him.
From when to when?
2009 to 2015.
That's the ex-wife. His first wife, Nicholas Kassotis, is accused of murdering his second wife, Mindi, but he was married to Heather first. She testified today. Let's take a look.
It was pretty much what I thought was a normal relationship. Very smooth sailing, never fought, kind of like best friends in a way.
Did he ever indicate to you whether he wanted children?
Yes, he did. We both did.
Do you have a medical condition that makes that unlikely?
Yes, I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS.
Notwithstanding that medical condition, were you able to get pregnant while married with him?
Yes,
And what happened to that pregnancy?
it was lost.
How did your relationship change over time?
It felt like we were more roommates instead of married.
Whose idea was it to get a divorce?
I believe it was mutual, but more so myself.
And the grounds for the divorce were what?
Irreconcilable differences.
What were his obligations under the divorce?
He was required to pay off the personal loan or refinance it if he couldn't pay it off in his own name. He was required to refinance or pay off the truck that he was driving. And he was required to either refinance or sell the property on Adrian Drive.
And at some point, was he ordered to pay you $1.5 million?
Yes.
Did he?
No.
How long after your divorce was it before he and Mindi got married, roughly?
About a year, almost to the day.
He was ordered to pay you the $1.5 million plus $90,000 in interest in that consent order. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And $10,000 in attorney fees.
That's correct.
And then the case was continued almost exactly 30 days to December 28th, 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And was there a hearing on December 28th, 2018?
Yes.
In Exhibit 2.45C shows the court found him not in compliance with the November 28, 2018 consent order and ordered Nicholas Kassotis to appear before the court on January 4th, 2019 to show cause why he should not be held in contempt.
That's right.
Did you go to that January 4th hearing?
Yes, I did.
What happened at that hearing?
The judge was very upset after he heard Nick testify under oath that he not only had the money, he had more than enough of the money, and that he just was refusing to pay it. So the judge was not very kind.
He admitted having how much money?
$32 million.
And did he tell the court he was having difficulty accessing that money?
Yes.
What did he tell the court?
He told the court that his wife, his current wife, Mindi, was holding his funds and that he thought that she had a claim to it because it was earned during his marriage with her.
What's going on with this guy? He's got $32 million somewhere. Let's bring back in our think tank, Cindy Rushing, Rick King, Ali Benevento. Ali, this guy, he's off the ranch somewhere.
Listen, this guy's living his worst nightmare right now, Vinny. His ex-wife is testifying in his murder trial. But
it doesn't get any worse than that. I'm trying to figure him out, Rick, though. I mean, he comes into a courtroom and tells the judge, I'm not paying the 1.5, but I've got $32 million. Like,
yeah, I don't know how that happens. In Palm Beach County, Florida, he'd be sitting in jail right now until he paid that 1.5. That's what happens here when you do that. I don't get that at all.
So, Sydney, do you see this playing into the alleged motive at all? Like, I'm still trying to figure out, like, if he killed Mindi, right? If it wasn't Jim McIntyre. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. If it's not McIntyre and it's him, like, I'm trying to figure out why. Do you think it's at all connected to the first wife in any strange way? Or is this guy just from another planet?
You know, Vinny, I'm not quite sure how, like, I have a hard time seeing the connection to the first wife. You know, if he says he's got $32 million, also when, you know, when the prosecutor was asking her about, you know, the divorce judgment, I think I probably would have said that he owed me $1.5 million up front. But I'm having a hard time connecting the two together myself as to why it was Mindi versus the first wife, when it's the first wife is who he owed the money to. So I'm not quite sure. I'm a little puzzled myself.
Okay, Allie, if you're not convinced yet that he's from outer space, take a listen to more testimony from his ex.
Are you familiar with him changing his last name?
I did not find that out until after he was arrested.
And did he ever explain to you why he changed the name?
No.
Are you familiar with the last name of Stark?
It made me think of the Game of Thrones character, frankly.
And who is that character?
That was one of the main characters that was probably, I think, killed first.
Did you and the defendant watch the Game of Thrones during the time you were married?
Yes.
What do you think? Is he naming himself after a Game of Thrones character?
He might be. This case is bizarre from start to finish, or well, it's not finished yet, but it's been bizarre from day one. So there's no telling. I feel bad for this lady sitting on the witness stand. She's probably embarrassed. I think he looks like he's having a good time, which is bizarre considering he's sitting in the middle of a murder trial. But yeah, bizarre. That's all I have to say.
His reactions, bizarre. Like it's like I'm going down memory lane here. Like wife number 3 testified, wife number 1 testified, and he's on trial for the murder of wife number 2. Let's take a listen to this, Rick, because she also helped investigators in this case.
At some point, did you become familiar with the GBI sketch?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that. How did you become familiar with it?
Well, I received a random text message asking if I was ever married to Nick. And of course, I was hesitant to respond to a stranger, but nonetheless, the curiosity got the best of me. And so she told me about...
Objection to hearsay.
Sustained rejection.
Based on what she told you, what did you do?
Based on what she told me, I looked it up, and I saw a similarity as far as the sketch was concerned, and I called the GBI to let them know that that looks remarkably like Mindi because of the jawline.
Did you tell the GBI who you were?
No, I did not.
She really wanted no part of it, but she was able to, and it was actually a very good sketch that was done. But Rick, it was her called GBI and said, yeah, that sketch, that's Mindi.
Wow. Yeah, this dude is out there, man. And I actually, as was said, I feel bad for this woman up there on the stand testifying. Imagine the embarrassment that she's going through, married to this guy who was clearly off the reservation. It must be difficult for her.
Yeah. Sydney, do you think he testifies?
No. Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, like you said, he's kind of out there. So, you know, and especially with him being a lawyer, right? He was in JAG. You know, I don't know. Is he going to come in and think that he's going to smooth talk his way out of it, or if he's going to put, you know, the doubt that he needs to kind of create, you know, into the situation? I'm not sure, but I've seen crazier things happen.
The three of us are sure. I think the three of us are sure. We shall see. Sydney Rushing, Rick King, Ali Benevento, thank you so much. We'll see you again really soon. Quick programming note, you can now catch up on all the latest in the dismembered wife murder trial with On the Record with Cody Thomas. Cody takes you through the biggest moments, shocking evidence, and key testimony so that you're up to speed on everything happening inside this Georgia courtroom. You can catch On the Record with Cody Thomas on CourtTV.com. Find it under the Shows tab on the homepage or on Court TV's YouTube page. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, I will reveal something else you need to know, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, Danny Rolling is known as the Gainesville Ripper. His case was covered on Court TV in 1994. Was Rolling the inspiration for the Idaho 4 killer known as BK? Tonight, we investigate.
This is the Court TV Podcast. Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Coming up next, only on Court TV.
Donna Ailson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law.
Terrible. Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
The matriarch mastermind murder trial begins next week, only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. And Kevin is suing Jody. Who is Kevin? Ruby Frankie's ex-husband, suing Jody Hildebrand, his ex-wife's business partner, maybe other partner, and therapist for medical malpractice. He's claiming that she manipulated him and isolated him from his family and falsely represented herself as a psychotherapist, although she was just a mental health counselor. Take a listen to Kevin Frankie here talking about Jody Hildebrand.
Have you communicated with your wife regarding discipline with your kids or their care or their physical well-being?
No.
So is she doing this on her own and just telling you how your kids are?
She's not telling me anything about the kids.
Who's this female Jody that your wife was with? Do you know a female named Jody?
She is a therapist and a life coach, I know. And she's...
Do you respect her?
Do I respect her? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she's a very honest, truthful person, yes.
Okay. Well, you're the custodial parent of this. I don't see why we can't explain to you why we're involved. So I don't recall the exact time, but sometime before 11 o'clock today, we received a phone call from 911 on our dispatch that a 12 to 13-year-old boy was knocking on doors in a neighborhood asking for food and water, that he was severely emaciated, that he had...
What is emaciated?
Skinny, scrawny, malnutrition, not enough food, not enough water to sustain life. So he had...
I'm sorry, what?
He had duct tape on his extremities, on his hands, on his ankles, and those were covering rope burns that were used to tie him down. Take a second and think about what I just said. That's the condition of your son.
And obviously at that point, they didn't know if Kevin Frankie knew what was happening to his children, and he did not. We'll keep an eye on this interesting theory, though, a medical malpractice lawsuit against a mental health counselor, not a licensed doctor, but we'll see how that goes. Right now, folks, I need you to take a look at your television screen because we have a missing child who needs your help. Take a close look. This is Emma Villagran Lopez. Emma, 17 years old, missing from Lynn, Massachusetts. Take a look at her picture. If you see Emma, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. You can call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Lynn Police Department in Massachusetts. Phone number's up on the screen for you right now. Let's see if we can get Emma to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.
There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.